Welcome to Just Energy Radio with your host, naturopath and medical intuitive, Dr. Rita Louise. We have learned from Einstein's theory that matter and energy are one. Physicists believe that all systems in nature have their own particular way of vibrating. From the swinging of a pendulum to the waves of the ocean to the light that brightens the sky each day, each of these oscillates at its own unique rate. The same holds true for every thought, feeling, event, or word we speak. Each has its own frequency or rate of vibration. What many of us don't realize is when we take everything in our universe down to its simplest form, it is all just energy. Join Dr. Rita Louise on a journey through time and space where past, present, and future collide. Today, what you believe may be called into question. What we want to know is, who made up the rules? Be brave and step outside the box. We are about to turn our world upside down and venture into the unknown. Hold on. We are departing our own beliefs and entering alternative realms. Enjoy the possibilities.
Hello and welcome to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for tuning into the show today. Yet another great show. We're going to be speaking with Brad Olsen about government secrets, disinformation, and Big Brother, and a whole lot of other stuff. But Just Energy Radio is brought to you by SoulHealer.com, where you can find out about the products and services I offer, including medical intuition evaluations, energy healing, and psychic readings. So if you have stuff going on in your life, you have a health issue, a problem at work, an issue with your relationship, you need some guidance in how to move forward in your life, give me a call, send me an email, and we can set up a time for a private consultation in person, by phone, and even via Skype. It's also brought to you by the Institute of Applied Energetics, where you can jumpstart your intuition today by downloading their free 50-page guide. Go to www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com. I'm just trying to think if there are any announcements. Christmas is coming up, and so if you need a gift for that special someone, you can get them a copy of my new book, E.T. Chronicles. It's available on Amazon.com or on Amazon.com. And also, if you haven't downloaded it yet, but my video icon, Deconstructing the Archetypes of the Ancients, is now available on Amazon.com as well for digital download. And just think, it's $1.99. If you're a fan of this show, you get to hang out with me and learn something new for $1.99. I mean, come on, what a bargain is that?
Brad Olsen's passion for writing goes far beyond his book publishing business or the online content he produces. His books have reached a wide audience across the country and have won numerous awards. His work has been reviewed in top publications, and he continues to lecture nationwide on various subjects. He has appeared on dozens of television and nationally syndicated radio shows over the course of 2 decades. Yet for all the fanfare, Brad likes to spend time with his friends and family while attempting to be outdoors as much as possible. His webpage is bradolsen.com as well as cccpublishing.com. So please welcome to Just Energy Radio, Brad Olsen. Hey, Brad, how are you?
Hey, Dr. Louise. Nice to talk with you again.
Dr. Rita or Rita, Dr. I don't even respond to Dr. Louise. It's like, who's that? Oh, me.
Your alter ego. No, Dr. Rita, we met in August at at a conference near Cahokia Mounds, and really hit it off. And so it's good to hear your voice again and pick up the conversation where we left off.
I know, it's just so much fun. I had such a good time at that event and meeting everybody, and I didn't know you, and I didn't know about you, and I always love meeting cool and entertaining people that their goal is to share their wisdom with the world, and I just appreciate that and what you're doing.
That's what it's all about.
So how did you get into this whole thing? What's your story?
Okay, well, I was a college student in Illinois, seeing that there was a big world out there, and decided to taken upon myself to self-finance a trip around the world, which I did in my mid and late 20s. And it started with teaching English in Japan, and then it went to about 40 countries I've been to in my life and continue to travel quite a bit. So I started my career as a travel journalist and did my first book called World Stoppers, a Global Travel Manifesto, which is still in print and still getting out there to people and inspiring them to make a trip of their own to see the world. And then I did the Sacred Places series of books, which have won numerous awards, and they're still doing quite well. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, I was starting to wonder if there's more to publishing and my writing career than just travel. And I just had a lot of long conversations with myself and my friends, and decided the area I wanted to get into were these esoteric subjects, mainly because they're so terribly interesting to me, and I felt that they had a story to be told, and quite frankly, as I got deeper into it, I feel that people truly have a right to know a lot of this stuff that's going on. And the nature of esoteric is those subjects that have been withheld and are embraced by a select few who take the time to do the research and truly understand what they are, and then as a result come away with it with a greater knowledge. And that's what I'm here to do, is try to impart some of that knowledge onto your listening audience.
Well, and I think it's interesting that you chose to use the word esoteric. I mean, to me, esoteric really has a connotation with spirituality and philosophy, and more in that genre. And I don't want to get into a lot of depth here, but why did you choose that? Because you go into a lot of other areas that we're going to be touching on, bloodlines and conspiracy theories and, physics and all kinds of stuff that, for the casual listener, would not fall under, the more spiritual, sacred, traditional connotation of that word.
True. And I do touch upon spirituality issues, philosophy issues, how esoteric traditions and secret societies have been taught and treated in the past. And I'm certainly not shirking away from any of that, but I look at it as a larger umbrella. I think esoteric can also be many of the things that we are dealing with in this modern age. And as you pointed out, those include conspiracies, cover-up, bloodline families, and a whole lot more. I mean, the other book in the series, Future Esoteric, is largely concerned with the ET issue. And that's a whole big onion to peel away the layers from right there.
It could definitely make an entire book all by itself.
And it has.
So let's start here. When we look at the world and the universe, is what we're told and the things that we learn in school or that are considered common knowledge true, or is there something else going on behind the scenes, things that we haven't been told?
I heard recently from a prominent whistleblower along the lines of Edward Snowden that we have been shielded and have been removed from knowing up to 90% of all there is to know. That is everything that humans have delved into, both in the past and very much the present. When we consider backward engineering technology, when we consider the possibility of a breakaway civilization and all the toys and technology that goes into that, we're looking at a lot of information that has been withheld from the people. And I feel like, for one, we have a right to know, but two, if you are interested in knowing exactly what it is that our human potential is, that these esoteric subjects should be very interesting, because they can not only inform us as to what is really going on in the world, but they can also make us much better people and much healthier, happier, stronger, and even live longer in life by knowing some of these subjects.
You mentioned back engineering, which I would consider a fairly recent development. If you make the assumption that we're talking about craft that have, crashed on the Earth during the Roswell era and moving forward. So I'm just going to put in that 1947 and forward period. Are you talking about we've been shielded from that point forward, or do you think that this system of cover-up extends further back in time?
I'm glad you clarified that, because indeed the backward engineering aspect of it is certainly a 20th century phenomenon. I don't think that even if a craft was recovered any time prior to, say, 1900, they would know what to even do with it. To be able to look into it and backward engineer the whole notion of taking things apart and then reconstructing them and then finding practical purposes both in government and in commerce is the essence of backward engineering. And indeed, I have a chapter in Future Esoteric called Backward Engineering that I get into a lot more.
It's hard to take a pyramid apart and put it back together. Kind of like a Rubik's Cube.
Or a UFO. But you asked going back in time, and that's a great question. And that's really the scope of the first book, Modern Esoteric Beyond Our Senses, because this is when I get into the secret societies that have existed for thousands of years, the mystery schools of the ancient Greeks and Egyptians, as well as some notions of who we truly are as we crack the genome and look deeply inside into ourselves and find that we are indeed a mix of many different genomes which have come together to make up the modern human as it is.
But why would we... So you're saying that we were engineered, I guess would be the question?
Well, this is a notion put forth by the show Ancient Aliens, and I was on 2 episodes in season 6 talking about different subjects. But part of the notion is that we have been visited in times of antiquity, and now that we're getting deeper into unlocking the human genome, we're starting to see that there are actually several different varieties of human being within the one, including a partial reptilian side of us. It's been called the reptilian brain, that flight or fight notion that we have in the most primitive part of our brain, and it's still there. And that's just one example. Other examples are possibly tying us into the Anunnaki, possibly tying us into proto-humans, such as Homo erectus and other pre-human species, even a little bit of Neanderthal here. So these are the things, if we look way back, we start to get a better idea about how it is that there is no missing link in the record. There isn't one, and there will never be found one, because humans arrived quite suddenly about 45,000 years ago into the present form without a very clear link between the proto-human types and this modern human, which appeared so quite suddenly. So that does give a lot of information regarding who we are and how we came about.
Okay, so they're asking me to ask you, are you on a headset and mic?
Yes.
Okay, because they're telling me you're sounding hollow. So I'm just relaying the message.
Okay, you're just the messenger.
I'm just the messenger. I'm just the host.
I can put the mic a little closer. Ask them if that helps.
No, I'm sure they'll let me know.
They'll let you know.
I have these people that talk in my chat window head thing. And then they send these messages and I'm supposed to read them. And they said yes, and they gave me a big smile. So we're good.
Okay, cool.
Okay. My belief is that, which I wrote about in my book, is that the ETs were here all the time, and they were the ones that directed the evolution of all plant and animal life on the planet. And so it does make sense that there would be this reptilian part of the brain, because it was part of the increasing complexity of life on Earth.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that is the emerging larger picture here, is that it's not that ET has come and gone, but has been here all along. And then if we examine underground bases and their technology for getting around the planet, it would seem that they have been here all along, and they have been directing our human evolution, both physically and most recently our social direction. And in some ways you could look at many of the things that have gone wrong, such as wars and environmental degradation, and there might be some of these malevolent ETs which are really forwarding their own agenda upon us and making us act to their wishes.
But you're saying that this is a recent thing, and okay, so no nasty cards or letters, but I'm sure my listeners won't do this to me, but what about the church? They have been controlling our behaviors for hundreds of years, thousands of years.
That's right. A great quote from William Cooper in his inaugural address to the UFO Congress in 1989. You can find it on YouTube and listen to it, and it's sampled by Eat Static, and it's so memorable. Every line that comes out of his mouth is great. One of them is, "You put aliens in the middle of this stuff and you get all the answers." And another one, which I really like, and it's taken me literally decades to wrap my head around it, was when he said, "It was learned that aliens have been manipulating humans through witchcraft, magic, the occult, and religion for centuries." So when you bring up religion and how religion has this hold over people, well, maybe there's even a higher power that has control over religion.
Okay, like?
Well, such as this malevolent ET agenda, which is here to control the human race as they see fit. The reptoids and the greys who work under them.
The part I find most interesting is that when you talk about levels of brainwashing, it seems like in the Western world, in the Judeo-Christian world, we are the most brainwashed group on the planet. And why aren't they equal opportunity brainwashers?
Well, I think it has something to do with Eastern religions, most notably Taoism and Buddhism, which are actually more philosophy than religion, which teach people to look inward, which teach people to become one with themselves and the environment. Whereas here in our Western world, we are taught to be successful, to acquire material goods, to move up the socioeconomic ladder. And it's almost in contrast to what many of the Eastern philosophies have in mind. One of the things I learned when I was traveling around the world, Rita, especially in India, which is called the most spiritual of all the countries, is that there are just millions of people in that country that have just totally gone the way of their ancestors and just walk the earth in search of knowledge and spirituality. And it's like the whole modern world around them, and it's certainly growing very quickly in India, has not even fazed them, that they're just on this totally different wavelength. And when you meet and talk to some of the holy men of India, it's kind of like a light bulb moment. It's like, wow, maybe everything that I did learn in the Western world is based on these fictions that we've been taught, these mode of operandi that we've been taught to live by and aspire to, that these people just know nothing of it, or more importantly, that they won't have anything to do with it. And basically what they do is walk around with a loincloth and maybe a few utensils and a bowl for rice, and that's it. And you can see that in many of the Buddhist countries of Southeast Asia too. The monks have nothing but the robe they wear and a bowl for rice. And in a way, when you think about it, it's quite liberating when you can think of yourself beyond want, beyond desire, beyond having a lot of these items. And as we know in the West, the more stuff you get, the more the stuff starts to own you. You have to worry about it getting lost or ruined or stolen. You got to store it. And there's a great freedom that comes with just having a backpack and the few possessions you have and being able to travel around the world. And that was my original motivation in the 90s when I traveled, backpacked around the world.
I've heard that from someone else, that they were in India, and I forget the entire, I forget actually who it was, but I remember the story or parts of the story where they wanted to, have a few $100s for emergency, and the person who was helping them get the thing organized said, no, you don't want to take any money because it puts you into a different place. It takes you out of that, I'm your humble servant and I'll go wash your dishes or do whatever if you're going to feed me. It just kind of takes you out of that place. And they found it very humbling, and two, they were amazed at the generosity and openness of the people to help him.
That's right. And when you really have nothing, and I'm not saying I could do this, have absolutely nothing, but when you do it, and this is also what I understand when I met with some of the sadhus and holy men of India, is it absolutely thrusts you into the moment. That you cannot think about your future, and you really don't want to think about your past. You're only there, right then and now, and whatever your immediate needs is, that's what you have to do. You don't even know where you're going to sleep at night sometimes when they're off on pilgrimage and so forth. They're just, every day is a new adventure. And there's a certain kind of innocence and freedom in that that I've always taken with me after that trip and thought was quite a noble endeavor on their part.
Yeah, I don't know that I could do that personally. Yeah. Okay. Let's kind of shift gears a little bit, but kind of keeping this whole topic of control and manipulation, because you had this whole section in your book that I thought was really interesting and something that I find kind of hard to believe, but I believe it, even though it seems unfathomable, is the whole idea of bloodlines and secret societies and this whole control network that's happening behind what we recognize as government. So let's start with the concept of bloodlines. What's that all about?
Right. Well, there is a chapter in Mount Anastera called Blood of the Gods. I think this is where you're getting some of this information, and it's basically that there have been these 13 bloodline families which have been very strong and very powerful for many, many years. We're talking not just decades and centuries, but perhaps even over the millennia. Now, here's a little point to understand. Remember, in ancient Egypt, the pharaoh was a living person, but was also a living god. Then the dynasties of Egypt melded into the Caesars of ancient Rome. And they too, the Caesars, were considered living gods. The emperors of Rome were considered to be deities. And that then melded into the Catholic Church. And you have the Pope, who is this intermediary between the human realms and God. And isn't it interesting that it all has taken place right there in the Mediterranean region, first in Egypt and then all the while in Rome. So you have these families which have been very, very powerful, and we've heard of some of them, the Medicis of Italy, and some of these bloodline families who ruled in Venice and Italy as merchants and then bankers and became very influential and powerful, all the while not necessarily telling the world exactly who they are. And they do prefer secrecy, just as in this modern age we have the Rothschilds, who are said to be worth multiple trillions of dollars. Yet they don't go out announcing to the world, hey, we're the richest family in the world, we rule, and this is what we do. They prefer to stay very much in the shadows. But now these families, these 13 bloodline families, are becoming well known. In fact, we know who they are, and we're calling them out by name. But what's so very interesting about them is that they always interbreed within their own bloodlines. So you don't really have much of a choice who you're going to marry or at least have children with, because they want to keep it within their bloodlines. And this is also true, as we know, in the royal family in Britain and other royal dynasties throughout Europe for many centuries. And they're the people who basically call the shots. Well, I propose that they're merely the captains and majors. And there's another step higher, that the generals are really these regressive ETs who have been controlling them by promising them fame and fortune and giving them everything that they want, as long as they play along with this other entity's agenda. Now we're starting to see many of these things start to come out. The Satan worshipping, the pedophilia rings, and many other nasty subjects that are tied to these bloodline families are also tied to some of the worst that humanity does to itself.
Well, that made me think of something else, but that's taking me way off topic. Do you think that when the Egyptian pharaohs, they were the living god, do you think that they were originally extraterrestrials, and that the baton was passed on to these individuals, or there was some kind of a hybrid thing that happened that passed their genetics to the royal family, and that's why they wanted to keep the bloodline pure, was to keep the genetic material pure?
Well, that's right, and we know that the pharaohs did that they would intermate with their cousins and their relatives, and again, very much along the lines of what these bloodline families do. And I would propose that they are this one and the same, that they are descendants of these pharaohs, of these living kings, with their divine right to rule. Now, we all know the beautiful busk of Nefertiti and her husband Akhenaten, who had these strangely elongated heads, almost cartoonish in their proportions, just so unhuman looking the way they were. And you could almost dismiss them as just artistic license. The king wanted to look different for some reason. You could almost say that it wasn't really how they looked, although Akhenaten himself made a point of saying, we want to look exactly the way we look, no glossing it over. And it wasn't until these elongated skulls were discovered in South America, quite close to where the Nazca lines are in Peru. The Paracas skulls are almost a dead ringer for the shape and sizes of these particular royal family. So that certainly brings us to the present, finding relics, even if they are halfway around the world, that tie into the whole bloodline or a different species of human coexisting with us mere mortals, the majority of the people on this planet.
You know, you're talking about these family lines, the Medici, Rothschilds, etc. But we find, you brought this up yourself, we find the elongated skulls in Peru. Do they have any of these 12 or 13 bloodlines that come out of South America? Or what about coming out of China or, you know, and any of the Americas, you know?
Well, as far as Latin America, as we call it today, or North America, Native American peoples, you got to understand, they were pretty much decimated. If there was a royal bloodline, it was not allowed to exist. So almost all of the 13 bloodline families come out of Western Europe and then migrated over to North America. Now, there is one family in China, last name Li, L-I, which is part of this white dragon family, which is extraordinarily wealthy and is maybe one of the leading voices for change on the planet that is rising up against the Western hegemony and federal banking system and so forth. Ben Fulford writes about them quite frequently, this White Dragon Society or White Dragon family. And according to him, that they do have the best interests of humanity in mind. Now, also keep in mind, they have their interests. And their interest is to stay rich and to stay powerful. So they don't always advocate the end to the money system, although they do, according to Fulford, look at all the injustices in the world and are quite concerned with that, the starvation, the poverty, the degradation to the planet. And they know that our course currently is very much unsustainable and want to see some large changes in that regard. Whether or not that's going to be successful, we'll have to wait and see, because we are coming into what I call the great showdown right now between these established Western forces led by the bloodline families versus we the people, who are basically having a mass waking up to all the shenanigans that have been put forth on us for so long, and only now are we beginning to understand. And that's why I address these subjects in the esoteric series of books, because they're very much along the lines of hidden knowledge, mostly hidden from us by these families.
What was their purpose? What is the purpose in hiding this information from us? I mean, obviously there's some control element, I would assume, but why?
Well, it is control. It is power. It is being the ones in charge. They truly believe they have a divine right to rule. Even if they're not kings, such as the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, they're still wealthy enough to be very much the bosses of the Western world, and they like that. They like to move and shake and do things the way they see fit and consolidate their power to stay in control for generations to come. Now, we could segue into what their grand plan is, which is this New World Order and one world government. If you'd like to go that way.
Yeah, let's go there.
Okay, because we're seeing the beginning of it happening right now. I mean, not only did Bush Sr. say it on national television that we have a chance to start a new world order where it's the law of the land, not the law of the jungle, that's going to take us there. And, you know, Bush Sr. was largely responsible for Agenda 21, which also plays into this whole globalization, of getting people off the land, stack them and pack them into cities, and other things like Codex Alimentarius, which is regulating our food sources, and we can go into GMOs and vaccines and other things that they're using to soft kill the population right now.
Yeah, we'll get into that in the second hour, because that's like one of my soapbox moments. But what is Agenda 21?
Well, Agenda 21 was rolled out at the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro in 1991, spearheaded by Bush Sr. himself. And he got most of the countries of the world to sign on to this. And it was the agenda for the 21st century. And you can say certain things like geoengineering, a.k.a. chemtrails, are Agenda 21 in action. They've laid out their agenda quite clearly, word for word, on the Georgia Guidestones. And one of those, the very top tenet, number one, is to get the world population to 500 million to live sustainably with the world. Well, where do the other 90% of us go, is the question. And the answer may be that the sinister aspects of Agenda 21 are there to take care of the other 90% of us, a.k.a. The slow poisoning death. So by the time we reach 65 and start to cash in on our Social Security, we're ready to drop dead.
It seems to me, I was having a whole discussion with someone the other day, and their comment was that the age of mortality average has gone up. And I'm sorry, I kind of feel like I disagree with that. It seems like, all right, I'm a little teeny bit of a Facebook junkie, but it seems like people are falling over every day, and they're not old.
Right. I just had a member of my extended family die at 57 from a brain aneurysm. Just boom, out of the blue, out of nowhere. He was in good shape. He wasn't overweight. Golfing all the time. And rest in peace, Uncle Jeff. And I have 1 year I had 4 friends, all in their 40s, die of brain tumors. That was rarely ever heard of in the 19th century, to die of brain cancer, or really die of any kind of cancer. So we are being poisoned. And that's why I said in my setup piece that understanding these concepts can make you healthier, stronger, and live longer. Because in one way, you have to look at what they're doing with the mass media and the programming that we go through here in the Western country. And there's no better way to put it than propaganda. We know that the media does lie to us. It's very much an agenda held by 6 corporations, which are owned by these wealthy families, by the way. It all kind of ties right back into it. And they would just as soon see 90% of us dead. They've already said it. Kissinger called us.
But then who would buy all of their stuff? Who would take their stuff to the dry cleaner? Who would clean their bathroom?
Well, they don't want all of us dead. They still want to have their servants. But look at all the insurrections that are going on right now. Well, first with Michael Brown a few weeks ago, and now this other gentleman who died of a chokehold in New York City. Both of the officers let go by the grand jury testimonies that they didn't do anything wrong. But nonetheless, you have millions of people protesting in multiple cities around the country. This does not bode well with these bloodline families. They see this as the moment when we all pull out the pitchforks like in the French Revolution and come to their houses and say, off with their heads. So the fact that the masses of people are waking up right now is a very scary notion to those in charge.
But we could all eat GMO-laced cake. But we'll do GMOs after the break, because that's a whole long talking point.
Yes, it is.
These different families, do they war between each other? I can't imagine if you have, the rich and the famous all in the same room, that they're all going to agree with each other.
Well, that's a good point. And certainly each have their own agendas, but I think the unwritten rule amongst them all is we all want to retain the power that we have. And if we look at the people who attended the Bilderberger conferences, these are not necessarily the top dogs, even though David Rockefeller does attend, and so does Kissinger. Many times they're the majors and the captains, where the big dogs won't be seen at these. However, they give these intermediaries their marching orders. And sure enough, oftentimes, right after the week of the Bilderbergers, they'll do the G8, and then you'll see the agenda for the coming year being announced to the world through the ministers and presidents and other governors who attend the Bilderberger meetings. So we're starting to see how they do it, how they either clash and then come together and then roll out what it is that they want to see done. The Davos conference, Davos, Switzerland, is this little city in Switzerland, which is completely private, and then they'll rent that out. They'll rent out the whole town. Nobody can come in or out. In Switzerland, boy, that's a whole ball of wax right there. Ever since the Knights Templars set that country up right after they were persecuted, called Octagon, the banker's paradise. And no wonder Switzerland has always remained neutral, because they are the ones calling the shots, sitting at their thrones at the top of Europe. So if you really want to get to the Western power structure, take a look at Switzerland. And if any of your listeners want some extra credit, they can look up this guy who does a series of videos going around Switzerland. He calls Switzerland Octagon, and shows all the symbolism from dragons over bank buildings to the coat of arms and all the different ways that Switzerland is ruled by pretty much these invisible masters, I think is a good way to put it. Leo Lion-Zagami, he is an Italian author, which my publishing company, CCC Publishing, is picking him up. And one of the books that we're going to publish in English in the coming publishing cycles is called The Invisible Masters, where he gets into a lot of this, as well as 3 books he wrote called Confessions of an Illuminati. And the next book on the subject of Leo Lion-Zagami is called The Last Pope, Pope Francis, Money, Occultism, and Masons in the Decline of the Catholic Church is the subtitle of that book, which will be out in April by CCC Publishing.
Well, we will have to talk.
We will have to talk. We'd love to get Leo on your show, too.
Well, I have one slot left, so...
Well, that'll
coincidence
be
or not.
Ah.
Oh, wait a minute. That's a March slot. Anyway, I have lots of April slots. Anyway, do you think that each of these different families or bloodlines, I won't even say families, bloodlines, has their own particular ET associated with them that's trying to push their agenda through?
Well, that would be these reptilian type species. And I pose it in the conclusion of Future Esoteric that maybe all the legends of the devil, of Satan, of Lucifer, of this horned beast that controls us, that is worshipped by many of these elite families, is really just a reptoid ET that has been here for a long time and wishes to exert its control over these top influencing bloodline families. Now, there's something else I want to point out about bloodline families I think you're going to find really interesting. It's said that some of them, well, not only is their DNA different, but the way that their brains are wired are different too. That they can quickly get into like a meditative alpha state, where this is like how people who want to or have the ability to astral travel need to get into this certain meditative state, that these people can do it just quite intuitively, that they don't even really need that much practicing or training to do it because they are of this type, as well as having slightly different DNA. And then we've all heard about shape-shifting and some of the abilities to mask their true identities. Now, I think this is mostly along the lines of some of these reptilians that can come and go into our reality because they are fourth dimensional beings. And let's say there was a seance. Let's say you and I, Rita, were invited because we had these important Bilderberger bloodline friends, and they felt that they could trust us, and we were invited to go to the ceremony. And we were there, and we're kind of looking at each other like, yeah, really? I don't believe in any of this stuff. It's all make-believe, right? And they said, well, just be quiet and watch the ceremony. And we're sitting there, and we're watching the ceremony, and they're doing all the pentagram and candles and incantations and calling up these spirits and this demon. And we kind of look at each other like, really? Is this what you guys do with your time? But let's just say an apparition appears. Let's just say it was something that we would call the devil. Boy, don't you think we would become believers pretty darn quickly that what we saw was actually real? And the fact that they're able to shadow, it's called a shadow the elite. So once you make this pact, the deal with the devil that we've always heard for so long, you indeed have a guide who follows you, who will make connections for you, who will attack your enemies for you as long as you are going along with their plan. And if you do that, you will find riches, fame, fortunes, whatever it is you seek in this material world will become yours. But if you stray and decide you don't want to go along with it, first of all, they'll cut you off, and then quite possibly they'll kill you too. So there is a huge motivation to continue to go along with these entities and continue what you started.
What about RH factor? That's something that I've been seeing coming up more and more with relationship to ETs or ET contact or potential bloodline connections. Is like an RH negative factor, which isn't really seen on the planet except in humans.
Well, that's right. And I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to continue with that discussion because there is...
Hang on one second. They keep bugging in the chat room. Okay, everyone, for your edification, vibrations. And I didn't say vibrator. I said vibrations. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, back to our regularly scheduled programming. Sorry.
We were talking about RH negative factor. Yes. And indeed, the RH negative runs in my family. So this is very near and dear to my heart because my Uncle Douglas died at 5 days old. He was the second son after my father, who was also RH negative. But my grandmother was RH positive. And herein lies the problem. Because if you have a father like my grandfather, who is RH negative, who has a wife who is RH positive, like my grandmother, and they have a child, and that child is RH negative, like my Uncle Douglas, and the blood of my grandmother mixes with his blood, he will die. And he did die. He became what's called a blue baby. And they do have ways to prevent that now. There are shots that the mother can take to prevent that contamination. But here's what's so interesting about the RH factor. No other animal species has this ability for the mother to kill its own offspring with its blood. That's why I feature this in the Blood of the Gods chapter of Modern Esoteric, because it's so terribly interesting and really does spell out a lot. about who we are, and as we were speaking at the beginning of the show, about how some of us humans are a little bit different, and how we carry these multiple genetic codings. And one of them, with this Rh negative, is a very good argument that indeed this bloodline runs through our human DNA as well, at least 15% of us. Now, those who are Rh negative, and that's also my cousin Sarah and her mother, they have psychic abilities more so than the average person. They have a keener perception for things like sight and hearing. They have, although this hasn't happened in my family, they're more prone to be abducted. Almost all abductees are Rh negative. So the ETs obviously know this too. And this is the pure blood. Now you see, the Rh factor, when it's Rh positive, that means it is showing a connection to the rhesus monkey. That's what the Rh stands for. But if it's Rh negative, that means it is without any simian connection. So therefore, this 15% of us is like the pure blood among the human race that has no connection with the lower primates.
Okay, but I don't like that because I don't have Rh negative blood, and I'm kind of cool and everything and stuff. See, now it's just going to make me whiny. This is true, and I really don't have a desire to be abducted, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Do they find any benefit? It seems very weird to me that we would create a mutation where there is not any benefit to the species, thinking Darwinism. Is there a benefit? Have they discovered a benefit why our species would create this variation of genetic structure?
Well, it actually runs in the face of Darwinian evolution, because how could this 15% of us have Rh negative if we all come from a single ancestor way back in time? So it really does play into the ancient alien theory, and indeed I have postured and positioned and proposed that they take on this subject, and they haven't. And it kind of makes me wonder, maybe this is like the smoking gun to everything, to prove that we indeed, one, have been tinkered with genetically way in our distant past, and two, prove that we have connection to various species of ETs. And this is mind-blowing information. I mean, this is the motivation of the ruling elite, to keep 90% of the most valuable information to themselves. This is why they don't want us to know this stuff. Because, think about it, it would blow the lid off of everything we've been taught that we think we know about ourselves. For one, evolution. For two, history. For three, religion. All of these things would have to go through a major revision, and they don't want to do that. And this is part of the reason why they've kept ET disclosure under wrap for so long, too.
So they're telling me we have 1 minute to commercial break. Well, let's just give out your book and your website, and we can just roll right into it, because it's not enough time to really start another conversation. So why don't you go ahead and you give it out?
Sure. Well, I'd invite your listeners to go to cccpublishing.com. That's 3 C's in publishing. You can see all of the books in their entirety and even read them if you want to just check out the content. I've put the Google Books app at 100% readability. So every one of the books and every one of the chapters that I reference, you can see on cccpublishing.com. If you want to learn a little bit more about me, it's bradolsen.com. My 3-year trip around the world is a website called stoppers.com, which is also the name of the very first book I did in the mid-90s. And I also produce an event here in San Francisco called the How Weird Street Fair, and you can see howweird.org if you're interested in the 20,000 person event that I produce here in San Francisco.
Well, that sounds like fun. I love San Francisco, but we'll talk about that on break. Okay, I'm Dr. Rita Louise. We're talking to Brad Olsen. His book is Modern Esoteric. His website is bradolsen.com, and we'll be back with Brad talking about GMOs and other like nastoids of the government after we return from these words from our sponsors.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages.
You're listening to IRN, the Inception Radio Network, Chicago, Illinois.
Are you looking for a cure for boredom? Never worry. IRN's new interactive website introduces a number of ways to pass time while you listen to your favorite show. Choose anything from the IRN chat lounge, the game lounge, video lounge, or the mood lounge. These fun, exciting features let you chat in real time with fellow listeners, view live skywatches, play daily posted online games, or pick a show based on topic. The choices are endless. Use your time wisely, keeping it all on IRN.
Who were the gods of antiquity? They've been described as the forces of nature, levels of consciousness, and aspects of our psyche. Stories that depict their incredible weapons, their flying machines, and their amazing adventures are characterized as being the product of our ancestors' fanciful imaginations. But what if the tales of the gods are true? Did the writers, chroniclers, and scribes of our distant past actually document a realistic view of our origin? My latest book, Man-Made, The Chronicles of Our Extraterrestrial Gods, looks at our most ancient legends. Learn of the torrid romances, elaborate plots, violent scandals, and conspiracies that played out in antiquity. Find out the role the gods played in the life and culture we have today. If you want to find out the truth of who we are and where we come from, order your copy of Man-Made today. For more information, go to www.manmadethechronicles.com. That's www.manmadethechronicles.com.
Hello, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Remember, you can take your Inception Radio shows on the go. Just download the Inception Radio Network app for your iPhone, iPad, or Android smartphones and access live shows, past shows, guest lineups, and much more. Just visit the iTunes Store or the Google Play Marketplace and download it today for free.
Move past the crossroads in your life and discover alternative solutions to your deepest concerns at soulhealer.com. So whether it's a physical problem, an emotional issue, a question about work, or troubles in your relationships, naturopath and medical intuitive Dr. Rita Louise can help you. Bring peace, harmony, and health back into your life. Schedule a session today. Visit soulhealer.com right away and live the life you've been dreaming of.
You didn't forget what's coming up tonight, did you? Hi, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Never miss that interview you were looking forward to or the show on your favorite topic. Follow IRN on Twitter, I_R_N, and get reminders about the evening's live shows as well as fun and important updates throughout the week. That's I_R_N, and never miss a great show again.
We only have a couple of seconds before we have to get back to the show, and I want to tell you how you can jumpstart your intuition today. Using my free 50-page introductory guide filled with simple, revolutionary, and proven techniques, you can ignite your intuition and tap into your inner wisdom, all from the comfort of your own home. The Institute of Applied Energetics is the leader in online home study instruction for those interested in becoming a certified medical intuitive, intuitive counselor, or energy medicine practitioner. Now is the time to transform your life and take it to a completely new level. Discover who you are and how you work. Open the door to the world of intuition, health, and healing. You can jumpstart your intuition right away by going to www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com and downloading our free guide. Get the opportunity of a lifetime and live the life you deserve. Download your free Jumpstart Your Intuition guide today at www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com and begin living a life filled with passion and purpose.
Don't have a computer? Is your internet connection down? Don't worry. Use your trusty cell phone or landline and call into our listen line at 401-283-6700 to listen to the Inception Radio Network 24/7. Again, that call-in number is 401-283-6700. For the Inception Radio Network, I am MJ.
Go deep inside yourself and venture into the realm of the unconscious mind with my Meditating on the Kabbalah guided imagery audio CDs. Discover who you are and what you want in life. Meditating on the Kabbalah can help you to open, clear, and revitalize the energetic pathways of your subtle being. They will support you in your spiritual quest by helping you to access the profound insights and inner guidance you need as you work in alignment with your highest good. Let them help you to release negative thoughts and emotions and clear away any limitations that may be keeping you from experiencing your full potential. Walk down the path to health, healing, understanding, and enlightenment with Meditating on the Kabbalah. Order your copy today at www.soulhealer.com. That's right, that's www.soulhealer.com.
Hello, Inception Radio Network. Would you like your favorite show to be played again live on air? Well, now the choice is in your hands with IRN's live request portal, an easy way to request your favorite show with a simple click. IRN's live request portal now gives you exclusive access to all the shows. How easy is it? Simply type a show name or a guest name, click request, even write a dedication message, and that's it. Try it now. Simply visit InceptionRadioNetwork.com, click on the live request tab under the show menu. Now playing your favorite show is just a mouse click away.
And now back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise.
Hello and welcome back to the second hour of Just Energy Radio. We're here talking with Brad Olsen. His webpage is bradolsen.com, and his book that we're talking about today is Modern Esoteric. But don't forget, Just Energy Radio is brought to you by the Institute of Applied Energetics. That's www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com, where you can jumpstart your intuition today by downloading your free 50-page guide. Also brought to you by soulhealer.com, where you can find out about all the products and services I offer. So, Brad, we are shifting gears, and I'm going to say we're going to move out of this whole bloodline conspiracy family thing, but we're really not, because we're just going to jump into a different aspect that I don't think people would connect the dots between the two necessarily. You had started talking about GMOs, and that whole thing makes me crazy. But actually, I want to start somewhere else with a different topic. You know, I'm sitting here thinking about everything we've talked about, and it's so intertwined with each other that it's like, well, we could start here and we'd end up here, and we can start here. But I think where I want to start, because I feel like this is kind of the key to this whole thing of where we're going to be moving next in this hour of the show, is the Georgia Guidestones. And you were saying that one of the notes on there, one of the edicts, is to, and I like saying it this way, especially in the holiday season, reduce the surplus population. So can you speak on that just a little bit for people that are not familiar with the Georgia Guidestones?
Sure. Well, they were erected by an anonymous donor who went by the name R.C. Christian. And some people think that this was actually Ted Turner who did it, because, of course, he is he was out of Georgia with CNN, broadcasts out of Atlanta, and he is a known eugenicist. He has stated many times that the planet would be better off with a whole lot less people, although he has 5 children himself, so he's a bit of a hypocrite in that regard. I mean, that's how the elite think. So it's okay for us to do whatever we want, but we don't want you to do it. So these Georgia Guidestones were put up anonymously, what am I thinking, about 25, 30 years ago. And they're on a hilltop right outside of a small town. I think it's called Elbert, Georgia, middle of nowhere, basically. And all the other edicts are fairly benign. They're very commonsensical. All the edicts, and they're like the new 10 commandments, are also written in different languages on the different sides of this Georgia Guidestone. But the one that really gets all the attention is that humanity should live in harmony with nature, and I don't think anybody ever thinks that is wrong, but they should live in nature sustainably with 500 million people. That's 500 million. Now there's 7 billion of us on the planet now, and kind of makes you wonder, what is the plan for the other 90% of us? And this Georgia Guidestones has been very controversial. People have vandalized it, and it's basically what the New World Order is personified as in many conspiracy circles. And something very unusual occurred just a couple months ago.
I was just going to ask you about that. Go ahead.
Well, right on top of where the edict about 500 million people living in harmony is written in English, there was a cube, a Masonic-like cube that was inserted in the middle of the night. Nobody saw who did it. But then people went up there and they said, hey, look at that cube. And one side it said 20, and on the other side it said 14. So people thought, wow, maybe something big is going to happen in 2014. And then there's another video of some guy climbing up there on a ladder and removing it. And indeed, there are other numbers and even other symbols and letters on the other sides of the cube. And, the conspiracy world went alight with reasons for what those other symbols and numbers and letters meant. And I couldn't really pose it a guess myself either. But it was interesting that it was up for just about a month or two, and then it came down, and the guy said, well, I was the one who put it up here originally, and I'm going to smash it. And they show him on this one video busting the thing up with a sledgehammer. And there's like a cop standing in the background, so it didn't appear that it was vandalism or anything illegal, that they wanted to do this. And now those Georgia Guidestones has this gaping hole on the top where this cube had once rested and is now gone. So I don't know. What are they trying to do? Are they trying to just get us riled up and go down different rabbit holes to deflect attention from themselves? Or is this some kind of veiled meaning? Because, it's said that every time this New World Order group makes a big move, that they'll use predictive programming to put it out there in one way or another, either in a Hollywood movie, all the references to 9/11 before 9/11 happened, or in popular culture, say music, all the entertainers holding a hand over one eye, which represents the Illuminati, to things like this Georgia Guidestone that perhaps are telling the world what they're doing. So they have the justification of saying, hey, well, we put it out there that we're going to do this false flag operation, and therefore we're justified in doing it because we let the people know. Now, even if it's done in a very occult-like way, they still feel that's a justification for putting it out there. And this ties into E.T. mythology as well, because it's also said that you cannot do anything without making some kind of announcement that according to the laws of our free will, that every time something big like this is going to happen, it has to have some kind of corresponding deed done in the real world. And perhaps this goes all the way up to the Galactic Council. So if they say, well, you guys, you helped them pull off 9/11. Well, we did predictive programming. We put it in Hollywood movies, and it was on an episode of The Simpsons and all these video games. We put it in there so people who were paying attention, who were following some of these occult-like rituals that we do, would know that it was coming. And they could have saved themselves as a result. So this is the kind of warped thinking that this cabal, this controlling elite, the Illuminati, whatever you want to call them, this is the kind of mentality that they have, that they would do these terrible, awful things to us, but it's like a ritual to them. It's not really human lives or suffering. It's just, this is what needed to be done to advance our agenda. This is the kind of sick minds that we're dealing with. And indeed, they're very psychotic in nature, the way they think and operate. And that's why we have to expose them.
I mean, that's just hard to believe that they think so far ahead or so far out of the box that would be acceptable.
Yeah, this New World Order has been in the works for 100 years or longer. So they do think very long term with this stuff. It even goes beyond generations. It may be something that may not even be realized in some of these older patriarchs' lives, like George Soros or David Rockefeller or Henry Kissinger, all in their 90s, which also begs the question, what kind of technology do they have to keep them alive this long, while healthy people all around us are dropping in their 40s and 50s.
Well, that kind of brings us to our next area, is the whole thing with the GMOs and all of that stuff, which makes me crazy. But it seems like there are things that are being done on the planet that would ensure individuals will not live a long lifetime. I remember growing up that it was when TV dinners were first, or I totally date myself here. Okay, I was told stories of when TV dinners were first available. Swanson TV dinners in the little aluminum tray that you would stick into the oven and cook for 45 minutes, or a little Swanson pot pie. I mean, those were like a treat. Ooh, we're having TV dinners. And now it's kind of like what we eat, but they're awful.
Yeah. Well, the more we learn about processed food, just the nature of keeping it preserved and putting certain chemicals in there to keep the shelf life up, that's one thing in and of itself that should keep people away. But then when you learn more about GMOs, and you've led up to this so many times, we might as well jump into it now.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, how does it feel to be a lab rat in a giant human open-air experiment? That's essentially what we are, because none of this stuff has been even tested long-term on animals. So they just rolled it right out. Here you go, human population. We're not going to label it. You don't even know. I mean, I was here in California when we tried to label it in the very first election. It looked like it was going to go. And then all of a sudden, all these big agricultural and processed food companies started throwing millions into it and just totally muddying the water, not even really making it a fair fight. I mean, just bringing total fear, uncertainty, and doubt, the FUD factor, into the whole equation. Your food prices are going to go way up if you make us label this stuff. It's like, no, it won't. It's going to give us transparency. And it's the transparency that is so lacking in all of these things. from the geoengineering. Although just this week, Newsweek has a cover story about geoengineering. So for all of you people out there who didn't believe that chemtrails were real, well, they're starting to roll out the PR campaign about what it's all about and how we're going to cool the planet down and save the polar bears. Yeah! And so these are the kind of things that happen post-debate, that we start to get the real meat of the matter almost when it's too late, almost when there's nothing we can do about it. And this hasn't even occurred with GMOs, apart from the fact that most countries in Europe outlawed GMOs and won't let them in, and trying very desperately to get the seeds out of all their fields. But here in America, man, we're just getting rolled over. This company, Monsanto, and all the other big agrochemical companies, they own the government. I mean, this government in this country, the richest country of the world, has been bought and paid for. And that's a mafia term when you have the cop in your pocket. He's bought and paid for. Our government is bought and paid for by these guys. So they can do whatever they want to do in this regard as far as rolling out these GMOs in this giant lab rat experiment, and we're all the participants. And we don't even know that we're doing it. I mean, we can all make the conscious choice, hey, I do not want to eat GMOs, and I'm going to avoid it. You make a fruit smoothie. How do you know that that's not GMO? You don't, because we don't label it. So
well, it's right up there when they had some issue with spinach years ago. I mean, not that long ago, but years ago, and they started irradiating it and irradiating other produce, which, created the beneficial effect of letting it have a longer shelf life. Well, we're eating that, and we don't even know what that's doing to us. And none of that's labeled.
That's right. And I have a chapter in Modern Esoteric called The Unhealth Industry. And the food is one aspect of it. Food control and escape is another chapter. And then you have all the things from the medical community, such as these vaccines. And I just read an article today that there was a whole ship in the U.S. Navy that had been vaccinated with flu shots, and the flu broke out. How is that possible? If 99% of the people on that boat all had the flu shot, how are they catching the flu? That just runs right in the face of the efficiency of vaccines. And we know that there are trace amounts of mercury in vaccines. Mercury doesn't leave the body. Mercury is a neurotoxin, just like fluoride. Fluoride in our water. Give me a break. It has nothing to do with the health of our teeth. It's to dumb us down. It's used to keep us subservient to the man. And that's the kind of madness that we're living in the world today. And these are all what we call the soft kill methods. This is what is getting people unhealthy and obese and dropping dead prematurely.
And the part that is the scariest to me is that the medical community, they will jump on a herb or supplement. I'm just trying to think of what it was. Ephedra. So ephedra is a natural stimulant, and it has been used historically in respiratory supplements to help clear congestion, but then they started putting it in stuff because it's a organic speed. And I guess one person was abusing it, and they were not fit and blah, 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 and they end up dying, and they pull it off the market because one person abused it. And they won't say anything about the GMOs. They won't say anything. They'll make these generalized statements about, well, we should eat healthy and we should eat a balanced diet, but for all the money that they have and that they will put into knocking out alternative medicine to keep them out of competition, they won't put any money into telling General Mills to stop making Fruit Loops or these other companies that are making foods that are killing us.
Right. You know, Kellogg's has just posted their 6th quarter in a row of dropping profits and market share. So that tells me that people are waking up because, of course, Kellogg's and General Foods use GMOs, and people reject that. They don't want it in their diet. They want to know what's in their food. And they're starting to turn away from that, which does give me a glimmer of hope that people are certainly waking up to this, at least as far as what they eat. Now, getting a vaccine shot or other things in the medical industry, which is just a giant juggernaut, is also serving to keep us unhealthy.
Why do people even get them? I don't even understand that mentality. It's like, okay, you'll get the flu. The world isn't going to come to an end if you get the flu. I mean, I could understand if you're immunocompromised where you might want to be really proactive about it. But if you're just a regular person, why run down to Walgreens and get a flu shot?
And they practically give them away. And I checked out in Walgreens the other day. Oh, would you like to get your flu shot today? I didn't have time to educate that cashier. I said, no, I don't want a flu shot today or ever. And they're pushing this stuff on us.
And whooping cough. A friend of mine was saying that her daughter had a baby recently, and she wanted to go in to go see the baby, and they wouldn't let her in unless she got a whooping cough vaccination.
Oh, my God.
And I'm like, huh? Huh?
I'm working on a 3rd book in the esoteric series. It's still going to be a couple years down the road, but one of the chapters and topics that I'm researching right now is on transhumanism and on how we are actually being changed physically as a species by many of these soft kill operations, which are all sold to us sugar-coated that they're going to help save us and keep us healthy and live longer and better lives. But unfortunately, that's not the case. And one of these examples that I'm going to use in the forthcoming book is Louis Pasteur, who basically was this brilliant French scientist. He invented the pasteurization of heating up milk and other food items to kill the germs. So his big thing was always about the germs. Well, there was another French scientist, his contemporary, who said it's not about the germs. It's about the bioterrain, which is the good bacteria in our body. And if you get your body to a very, very healthy state, which this other scientist, pretty sure his name was Bernard, had done, he called all the scientists together and he said, my bioterrain, my body is so healthy that I'm going to drink this glass of water tainted with cholera, and I'm not even going to get sick. And I'm so confident in my theory that I'm going to do it. And he did, and he did not get sick. Well, he and Louis Pasteur were at odds throughout the whole 19th century. And it wasn't revealed until the 1970s when one of the ancestors of Louis Pasteur released his papers. And on his deathbed, Louis Pasteur said, it is all about the bioterrain. Bernard was right. But he couldn't say it in his lifetime because everything that he worked on was predicated on this germ theory. And this germ theory became what we call allopathic medicine. And allopathic medicine is everything that we can just take a pill to cure, which we can get a vaccine to prevent, that we can do all these things to our bodies, which is transhumanism in action, that are all completely unnecessary. And I have the example of Royal Raymond Rife, who invented this machine in the 1930s, which could see cells, which could see cancer cells. And he knew that everything had a frequency. And he invented this machine to basically identify the frequency of cancer cells. And he would apply this telescope-like device and just match the frequency, almost like a opera singer who reaches a certain octave that'll explode a wine glass. And he would explode the cancer cells. And he was starting to have such incredible success rate that they had to come in and just squash him like a bug. And that's what they did. And you could still
squash him like a bug. They put him in jail, and they confiscated all of his equipment and notes. Bye-bye.
That's bug squashing. But you can still go down to Mexico and get treated for cancer with a Rife machine. However, you cannot get chemo first. If you get chemo, you're done. You cannot. His machines won't work to get rid of the cancer. So that's very interesting, that perhaps there will soon be a renaissance, and we're going to start looking at medicine in a completely different way, moving away from the allopathic mode of medicine. And just keep in mind that the American Cancer Society, in their name, they're not the American Anti-Cancer Society. They're the American Cancer Society, and it's one of the most profitable and powerful medical institutions out there, which are promoting 100% the allopathic medicine techniques for treating cancer, which at its core, like from the time of this Louis Pasteur experiment and cholera, that they're going about it completely in the wrong way, that it is all about the bioterrain. And once we know that, we can start making our bodies extremely strong and very resilient to just about anything they can throw at us. But the time is really running out, because we have to come to this knowledge before it's too late, because this transhumanism stuff is catching up to us, including what they're raining down on us in the chemtrails, the Morgellons syndrome, and so many other things that a lot of people are not even aware of. And let me tell you, ignorance could become your demise unless you start to wake up to this stuff, because it will do you in and it will create a lot of harm. So it's very, very important for your listeners who are awakened to really start paying attention to a lot of this stuff.
You're in California, and there was a question in the chat room a little bit ago while we were talking about GMOs about Fukushima. What kind of impact do you think the fallout from Fukushima, not just to the sea life in the ocean, but to life on Earth, that is going to have? And these oil spills, I mean, there were so many, I'm going to say, natural disasters or unnatural disasters that happen that impact the water, the air, not that someone is doing it to us, although, that part could be questionable. What do you think all of that is doing to us as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. Out here in the West Coast, and I just live 20 blocks from the Pacific Ocean. I'm very, very close. I go down there and play volleyball with my friends on the beach. All the starfish are dying up and down the coast, and nobody really knows why. I've seen a couple PBS theories that it's something to do with some really strange disease that they've all caught. But really, just a few years after Fukushima, well, your listener asked a question, what do I think about it? Well, I don't eat seafood anymore, for one, which sucks because I love sushi, or if I do, it's just maybe once or twice a year, Dr. Rita. It's pretty much over as far as seafood goes. Unfortunately, I feel like the Pacific Ocean is tainted right now, and especially in the Bay. We had a lot of mining operations during the gold rush, not just for gold, but for other minerals. And down in San Jose, there was a big mercury mine. In fact, that's why the newspaper in San Jose is called the San Jose Mercury Times, named after this very lucrative mercury mine. Well, so much of it had bled out of the mine and down the creeks and into the bay. You cannot dredge anything. You cannot put in a new pier in the San Francisco Bay, and you certainly don't want to eat any of the sea life that comes out of here. And I don't know if you know, but women in Marin County, which is one of the wealthiest counties in America, also have one of the highest breast cancer rates in the country. And that really doesn't make sense, because rich people generally eat the best food and take care of themselves the best. And so for Marin County women to have high incidence of cancer as they do kind of runs in the face of money will solve your health problems, because for these people it don't. But, out here we love our seafood, and we just opened up crab season. A lot of people eat those Dungeness crabs instead of turkey for their holiday meals, but not me. I think it's over, which is a shame.
I miss California, but that's another story. I used to live in, I graduated from San Jose State.
Oh, nice.
So it's a old stomping ground.
There you go.
Okay. I have to move. This has been so much fun. I just been in the same spot. Okay, so we talked about Fukushima. You're talking about people need to wake up. And so there are things that we can do. We can make better food choices. We can choose to not eat GMOs or not eat foods that have a lot of chemicals in it. But there is so much that is being either slid in under the wire, take the irradiation, or take foods that we eat, especially animal products, that they feed the pigs or the chickens or the cow GMO. So now we're getting secondhand GMOs, or the chemtrails. It seems like there's so much going on that we can't, other than complain, we can't control, because it is being done around us, and it's not something that we're really having a choice. We can't, I guess we could run around with a gas mask on if we see chemtrails, but do you see where I'm going with that?
Oh, I do indeed. And you know what? I limit my heavy exercise days when I see them spraying heavy. And they usually do it on the front end and back end of storms, I've noticed. So right now we're having a great rainstorm throughout California. Boy, we've needed it. The biggest storm we've gotten in 2 years, filling up our reservoirs. And I have not seen any in the last few days when it started raining. And these are the days I go jogging and take my long hikes. And I can tell the air is so much fresher. The days when they're spraying, it's got this tinny, metallic taste even. And sometimes a smell to it. And I've gotten sick, actually, if I'm out playing sports really heavy all day, which obviously should have the opposite effect. You should come back and feel great. I've come back and felt terrible. So I do try to limit myself on heavy spray days, how much physical activity I do. And this is very real, and it's just coming out right now. The UN is finally debating geoengineering. They've talked about launching a satellite which is going to monitor the chemtrails in the sky. And I can tell you, quite frankly, that I've been out playing volleyball on the beach, and blue sky day, high pressure, there's not a natural cloud in the sky for hundreds of miles. And I know this because I watch this radar of the entire Pacific region, and I'll see them spray. This grid pattern, play tic-tac-toe in the sky. Then I'll come back and watch the weather report. They'll say, oh, just a couple of high clouds out there today. So they're totally covering the whole thing up. And this is what really makes me angry, is that there is no disclosure about what it is. And these people who work in these cushy jobs as so-called meteorologists, well, if they were to talk about it, if they were to truly report on it, and I'm sure they know just as well as I do what's going on, they're one and done. They get fired. And they've all been talked to that you don't discuss this. You don't call them chemtrails. You just call them high, fluffy clouds and let the sheeple believe that. narrative. But you know what? People are waking up and they're starting to realize that the news is a propaganda machine, and the stuff that they're telling us is not true. I mean, they love to tell us about murders and car chases and lost kittens. All of that is true. And for the most part, the weather is the weather, although it's being manipulated and geoengineered. But the big stories about ISIS, total scam, that's Mossad and CIA to destabilize the Muslim region. All of that news reporting is false. So don't get your news off the television, folks. Get it off trusted sources on the internet.
And that's the part that I think is just totally crazy. That, how do I want to phrase this? There's what we have been led to believe is the reality of the world.
Right.
Okay. And then there is what is coming out as what the real reality of the world is. And they're two totally different things. It kind of reminds me of Neo in the Matrix, after taking the red pill or whatever, and he finds out that what he thought to be reality was just crap. And all of this stuff is going on in the background that he had absolutely no idea of.
Yeah, I quote The Matrix in both of the esoteric books because it's so appropriate. It really is the red pill, blue pill scenario. And we have that choice. We are given the choice. If you take the red pill, you'll go down I'll show you how deep the rabbit hole goes, and you'll never be the same. Or you can take the blue pill, wake up tomorrow, forget any of this happened, and just go on living your life in that illusionary state. But there's a saying that the truth is a constant, that it's like a pillar in the universe, that the truth can never, ever be destroyed. It can be masked, it can be shrouded in lies, it can be covered over, it can be used to deceive us into a false reality, but the truth is always going to remain. And if you just keep that in mind, that all this stuff that we're seeing is this big charade that's getting us to think in a different kind of way for a very specific reason, you kind of start waking up and seeing through it all. It's like, what was that movie with Roddy McDowell, the John Carpenter film, where he puts on the glasses and then he sees all the signs, say, obey, go to work. And he takes them off, and then it's back to what we all see. And that's kind of how it is. It is sort of a Matrix-like world out there. And it's up to every one of us to use our God-given abilities of discerning what is right and what is wrong. And never underestimate your intuition, because your intuition is your guide, is your higher self telling you that maybe what you see is not what it really appears.
I mean, it just becomes this giant rabbit hole, or it makes the whole structure seem like a house of cards. We do other shows, on UFOs, conspiracy theories, disclosure. For the government to disclose UFOs, it's kind of like they're starting to topple this house of cards that they built, because, well, if UFOs are real and you were lying about it, then what about JFK? And then what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And it just will take this whole fabrication and knock it all down.
Yep. It'll be a house of cards. And there you have it. There's no wonder why disclosure has never occurred, and maybe never will in an official capacity, that it'll just have to get forced out through the channels that we see in operation. Researchers, talk shows such as yours, Disclosure Project. I had lunch with Dr. Greer a number of years ago. He's doing some great work, and he is in communication with ETs. His Cirrus Project film that just came out is really amazing. And in the film, he shows these tiny little ETs that were found, these little bodies. In my esoteric series books, I have the Star Child skull, which was done some DNA testing on it. Lloyd Pye, before he passed away, had lectured about the Star Child for quite a bit. And these things are amazing. These subjects really rewrite history as we know it. But of course, you're not going to get this from the mainstream media. And so many people in this country rely on their Fox News to give them their source of information. But as Richard Nixon said back in the 1970s, the American people won't believe anything until they see it on television. And the controllers know that. And believe me, I have relatives who I know do not look at the same internet sources for news that I do, that get only their news from television. And I try to have some of these discussions like we've been having tonight, and it's like hitting a brick wall. And they look at me with like a glazed over look. Are you serious? But there has been a conditioning in this country ever since JFK, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that's where the term conspiracy theorist came out, when people question the Warren Commission report that there were shots fired from the grassy knoll, and if there was another shooter, then that would prove a conspiracy, and that basically it was a coup d'etat, which it was. But to say that, as you said, would have the same effect of disclosure and topple the legitimacy of our government. And right now, it seems like it's a house of cards ready to go at any given moment, because that legitimacy is at a record low. People's faith in Congress to enact laws that are going to be useful for the people versus how they perceive the mass media. And they've done studies about people who cross over and get information off the internet, or people who are strictly getting their information off of television. I have a chapter in Future Esoteric called Media Manipulation. It's a science, Dr. Rita. I was a marketing major in college. I was going to get into advertising. I did my term paper on subliminal advertising. This stuff is a codified science, how they can manipulate people in so many different ways. And don't think that it's coming to any kind of conclusion. In fact, they're just getting better at what they do.
I need to learn how to do that, so then people will buy more of my books.
You have a great book, Dr. Rita.
Well, I'm working it here. I'm working it here, Brad. Come on.
You got to work it in every time. Well, who is it? The CIA, William Colby under Ronald Reagan, said that when the American people believe everything is false, we know we've gotten our job done. I'm paraphrasing. It's not exactly those words, but that's what he meant. We'll know we're successful when all the lies that American people believe are false, that we've won. And that's basically where they're at, or they have gotten to that point. But now there's this game changer called the internet. And who is it? One of the Rockefellers, who said we should have kept the internet national security. We should have never allowed the people to have it. Well, why is that, Mr. Rockefeller? I think it was Jay Rockefeller said that. Why is that? Because we would see all the crimes that you've been up to, and then we could actively expose you and discuss these things. So they are running scared. And I actually think that the next 2 years with Obama in office are going to be absolutely pivotal in this country.
Well, and the interesting part is there have been people trying to organize the public and getting nowhere, using healthcare or cutting off alternative options for alternative healthcare as kind of the platform, a lot of different platforms to get people to move forward. But they can't ever get the youth to participate. They don't. But you shut off the internet. Do you want to hear an uproar from the X generation? Go ahead and do it.
or the millennials. You know,
Right,
this millennial generation, who are basically the 20 and 30-year-olds right now, they don't even watch television. Something like it's a huge amount, like at least 1/3 of them do not even own a television. And this also is making the controlling elite very, very nervous, because they know that if they can't control people with that idiot box, that they're losing a huge amount of their control that they've traditionally always held. So I think it's great. Hail the younger generation. And you're right. If they attempt to do a kill switch on the internet, all hell's going to break loose. But look, I mean, many of the large internet companies, and I'm right here in Silicon Valley, the Googles, the Amazons, the Yahoos, the Apples of the world. I mean, a lot of these companies, they're just tech companies. They're completely reliant on the internet, like Amazon, which is valued more than any other department store now. It's just a website. You know, of course, they deliver goods, they have factories and so forth, but they operate off of the internet. So it's certainly a can of worms for the elite, because they know on one hand they would love to shut us off as far as information, or at least start censoring, and that's already in the pipeline. That's already happening. But they would be remiss to cut off some of their revenue streams and taxation streams for the government to do that. So it's kind of it's a tough one for them to decide what to do. But I think censorship in the internet, it's certainly only going to become more so if they have their way. Of course, I support net neutrality and keeping an open and free internet, but that's just my voice.
Well, I mean, my hope is that that is how it will play out, but I've heard that in some countries they do have censorship, and I was talking to someone, I think it was in Israel, and they were saying that there was a lot of websites they couldn't get to.
Yeah, and it's true in China as well.
Mm-hmm.
They can do that, and they will start doing it here, and that's a shame because we have First Amendment rights. But like Jay Rockefeller says, when people have free access to information like this, we should have treated it like a case of national security. They're not happy with this free exchange of information, that's for sure. And think about how the internet is. The internet is you and I interacting on a level basis, unlike the very rigid hierarchy of traditional media. That is the X amount, the 5 or 6 news channels that you could turn on, and it's just them talking to us. There's no back and forth whatsoever. Well, that's all changed with the internet. The internet is the great equalizer. And the best thing we can do to ensure freedom and success in this country is to keep the internet open and free, because this is what is going to be our true First Amendment rights of the future, is to have that. But like you said, I think in certain countries we're already seeing the writing on the wall that censorship is starting to take place.
Well, I think that it was going on kind of from the very beginning, that they were cutting stuff off, or they did it in Egypt as well when they were having the uprising, because they don't want the information getting out. They don't want the news to get out to other countries to let people know what's going on there. It's just, we live in very, very strange times, don't you think?
Well, we do indeed. And this was part of my motivation 4 or 5 years ago of changing my editorial direction and getting into these esoteric subjects, because I feel like it is so absolutely necessary that people at least have the option of learning about these things. Some people will choose video games, and every time someone plays video games, another book dies, is a meme on the internet. But those who seek the knowledge and seek to better themselves will find an advantage to continue reading, continue to buy books such as yours and mine, and to expand their minds. Because truly, we live in an age where knowledge is power. And the more knowledge you have, the more powerful you can become as an individual and a person. So keep on reading, listening audience.
That's right. And support your local bookstore, which has become kind of a thing of the past.
It has, but then, it's a double-edged sword, as you know, because now we have ebooks and different platforms to get information out there. So while we lose bookstores in the physical sense, we also gain new market shares with ebooks. So it's a double-edged sword for sure. But I don't think the books are going to die like magazines and newspapers are. I think this is the one form of print media which does have sustainability power, because people do like the tactile feeling of holding a book in their hands, and you can't really take your computer down to the beach to read a book, or you wouldn't even want to get sand in it and ruin it.
That's why you get a Kindle.
Yeah. Get a Kindle, but still buy traditional books. And hey, Christmas season is here, so get our books for stocking stuffers.
Yeah. And the one thing that's scary about Amazon, not that I don't kind of love Amazon and shop there quite a bit, is that they underprice everybody else.
Uh-huh.
I can't even sell my book at the price that they charge.
I know. Yeah, but at least with ebooks, there's no shipping charges, there's no warehousing fees, there's no printing costs. Mm-hmm. So it is cost efficient in that regard.
Yeah. So what are you up to next? We have about 3 minutes before we really need to wrap up. So what are you up to next?
Okay, well, right now I'm putting on my publisher hat and working with Leo Lianzagami, this Italian author, on his 5 books on a deal that we just signed the beginning of August. So The Last Pope, Money, Masons, and Occult in the Decline of the Catholic Church will come out in April, but you can already see it on Amazon. I work through my distributor, Independent Publisher Group, in getting these books out there. And we're just about to announce Confessions of an Illuminati Part 1. So I'm basically coming out with a new Leo Lianzagami book every publishing season, which is every 6 months, until the end of 2016, early 2017. And then I will have my third and final esoteric series book called Beyond Esoteric done then. So my publishing horizons are quite filled, and I also have the How Weird Street Fair coming up on April 26th. So any of your listeners in Northern California or the Bay Area, come on out to Howard Street in 2nd next year for our 16th annual event. I will be your host, although you won't probably see me anywhere.
So what all happens at this event?
The How Weird Street Fair is the largest electronic music event. So we've got 11 stages with DJs and performers, and people dress up in costumes. It's a really fun day. And if you read the chapter called So You Want to Create a Street Fair in Modern Esoteric, is kind of like my bio chapter in that one book. Kind of describe how I started this whole event, and it's kind of my way of giving back, of proving that it's all about service to others.
Cool. I wish I lived in California again, because then I could come and hang out and dance and anyway.
Come on out on the big old jet airplane.
Yeah.
Make you a VIP.
Leaving on a jet plane. And so I bet if people went to Amazon.com, they could get your book, Modern Esoteric.
They can find both of the esoteric guides on cccpublishing.com or Amazon or any local bookstore. Some of them have it. I know Barnes & Noble has sold hundreds of them, and they continue to order them. So if you don't find it in your local bookstore, and I do like to recommend people support their neighborhood local bookstore to keep them in business. If they don't have it, they can order it, and we'll have it within a few days. So the books are very easily accessible.
This is the question I like asking. So if they order it directly from you, do they come autographed?
Well, that's right. That's the only way you can get an autographed copy is from cccpublishing.com.
And that's priceless.
Yes. We'll see it on eBay in 20 years from now. Selling for thousands of dollars.
Brad, the music's going to be coming up. I need to let you go.
Dr. Rita, it was such a pleasure. I can't believe 2 hours went by that quick.
Yeah, I hear you, but don't hang up after when we go to commercial thing.
Okay.
Okay? All right. So that's Brad Olsen. His webpage is bradolsen.com. The publishing site is cccpublishing.com. And next week we have like an amazing show. In the first hour we have Donna Eden of energy medicine fame and her husband David Feinstein talking about the energy of love. And in the second hour we have Jim Mars coming on talking about, do the global elite conceal ancient aliens? And so until next week, I'm Dr. Rita Louise. This is Just Energy Radio. Be blessed.
Join host Dr. Rita Louise each week at this time for Just Energy Radio.